Good morning, y'all.
Hello.
Good
How is everybody?
morning. Doing good.
I need another cup of coffee. Mine's empty.
Oh, mine's cold. Ugh, cold coffee. Ugh.
But anyway.
So how is everybody? Good?
All right.
Oh,
We're
Getting
deep
closer to
into
Lent.
we're deep into Lent. Excuse me. And we are looking closer and closer at Holy Week, and we're planning for that. Excuse me. It's getting closer.
Yeah. I think so the past couple of weeks we were talking about Lent, and we talked about Ash Wednesday, kind of letting our boys and girls know what was going on for those. But I think when we last left off with Old Testament stories, I want to say we kind of left our people of Israel at a cliffhanger. They've kind of been hanging on that cliff for a little while, metaphor. And when we left the people of Israel, they were about to get overrun or defeated by a big army, which is a scary place to be in. So we do want to give an update on our Old Testament characters. What happened to them? How did that battle come out? How did that war come out?
They split up. Let's remember they split up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's one thing. They divided kingdoms. You have the northern part, the southern part, and how did it turn out?
Good.
Well, good.
Yeah, I think they took a loss.
They're strong. They're better together than apart.
Mm-hmm.
They were an important thing.
Yeah, they were easier to defeat once they were split up and divided.
Yep.
So our people of Israel got defeated.
Yeah.
And then they took them off to this place of what they call exile.
Exile? What does exile mean?
Well, it kind of sounds like the word exit. If our boys and girls know the word exit, I think those two words are kind of related. And so they took them into exile. And exile is not like one place, it's kind of a way of being. And so what it means to take someone off into exile is you take them out of their home, take them to a new place, and they can't go home. And so in the case of our people of Israel, they got taken out of Israel and Judah, their home, that promised land that God gave them in with Moses and all, that promised land, that home, they got taken out of that promised land by the other armies and carted off into the lands that those other armies said they could go to. And they were there for, I want to say 40 some odd years. It was quite a long time that they were in exile.
What does it remind me of? It seems like they've been in this predicament before. It seems like after they had another EX word, the Exodus, they got to a place where they thought they were going to be free, but then they wandered around in another very important word, the wilderness. They were sort of like in exile then too.
Yeah, so they went from wilderness to home, and then they got pulled back into the wilderness again. So they're in a wilderness spot right now, which seems kind of fitting for Lent. So there's a lot of stories that happen in the wilderness times, another wave of wilderness times. So we're going to talk about that, but we figured we should pick up and let people know where our wandering people of Israel are at the moment in the Old Testament. Catch you up there. And then we have, I understand, a New Testament story today.
That's right.
An actual story.
We do. But you're right, Pierre. That's important now, because I know the boys and girls, we need to tell them where we're headed next. And they were in, and that's important, the exile. And we all have those moments of exile when we feel like we want to go home. We just don't feel good until we get back home. Okay, the New Testament story is the road to Emmaus. What did we talk about last week? That's important to know what we talked about last week, so you know what this week. I'll give you a hint.
Yes. Mm.
The cross.
Jesus died on the cross.
Yep. Jesus died on the cross. Okay, let's read this story and see what this is about. The road to Emmaus. 3 days after Jesus died, Cleopas and his friend were slowly walking down the road to Emmaus. They were walking slowly because they felt very sad. Why did Jesus have to die? They wondered. After a while, a stranger began to walk along with them. The stranger was really Jesus, but Cleopas and his friend didn't know it. What are you talking about? The stranger asked. The men looked at each other. Are you the only person in town who doesn't know what just happened? They asked. They told the stranger what had happened to Jesus. Jesus was a great teacher, Cleopas said. We hoped he was the one God promised would save the world, but instead he died on a cross. We took Jesus's body down and put it in a tomb. This morning, our friends went to the tomb, but Jesus's body was gone. They said there was an angel there instead. The angel told our friends, Jesus is alive, but stop being silly, the stranger said. How many times do you need to hear this? It was God's plan for Jesus to die and become alive again and save the world. Excuse me. By now, they were almost to Emmaus. Cleopas invited the stranger to stay for dinner. During dinner, the stranger picked up a loaf of bread, broke it, blessed it, and gave each man a piece. All of a sudden, Cleopas and his friend recognized the stranger. It was Jesus. But then Jesus disappeared. Cleopas and his friend jumped up, ran from the room, and went to tell the rest of Jesus' disciples that Jesus really was alive. God kept another promise. Wow. Now that's a story.
So this is right after Easter. A lot of our boys and girls know the Easter story. And this is the evening after Easter morning. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. This is, I guess my first question is, if I were on the road too with Cleopas and a friend, they must have been definitely confused, but maybe a little afraid too, because they would have thought, after thinking back, was this a ghost we just saw?
Yeah.
Was this a Jesus? They probably didn't know what was happening.
Yeah. And I kind of wonder too, like, what it was like for Jesus to sort of be walking with them and be like, hey, I wonder when they're gonna notice. I wonder when they're gonna notice. I wonder when they're gonna notice.
It's like that old TV show, they all got punked by Jesus.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, and it's interesting you bring up the idea of Jesus being like, did they think Jesus was a ghost? Because this is a little bit of a spoiler, but then there's another time that Jesus appears to the disciples and they think he's a ghost, and he asks for something to eat and eats with them, because it's kind of showing, I'm not a ghost, ghosts don't eat, and he has them touch him and feel that he's very solid. So that did run through the disciples' heads in another story. They were like, is this really Jesus? Is he a ghost, or is this really him? So yeah.
Really, what did Jesus think about this? Back to that. Was he how did he feel? Because remember, Jesus is human. He shares these emotions like we do too.
I wonder if it's appropriate to say this. Maybe there was like some sense of betrayal because the disciples in some ways just went back to their old ways.
Yeah. Well, Jesus did seem to be a little angry in the story that, how many times do you have to be told this? We said this was going to happen, but that's us too. We hear all of these stories, and still we may believe, but then we forget, and then we believe again. But God, again, that's the important part, keeps the promise every time. Keeps the promise to always Say, come on back. Let me remind you of the story. Let me remind you.
And how about the part that they realized who he was when he was at the table with them? That it wasn't until they started eating and sitting down and eating together, but it's when they started eating together that they got it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
That
there's a
shows
lot of-
what meal time was.
Yeah, throughout. I mean, we did it in VBS last year. There's tons of stories that, and really crucial stories that centered around a shared meal.
All right, what do we have next week?
Next week we have. I haven't looked ahead yet. Next week we have. I think Esther. We're going to talk about because we're a little. I think Esther is next week for the Old Testament story, and the New Testament story. Is Pentecost. I love Pentecost.
Ooh.
I think that's going to be a fun one to talk about next week.
You might have to
All
light
right.
some of your tiki torches for Pentecost.
Absolutely. Get some doves and some Ruach Yahweh, some breath of God, and we'll be all ready. Some red. Wear something red. I have a red pin. All righty. Y'all have a great week.
All right. See you.
Well,
Bye. Bye-bye.